Good morning. Welcome. I'm going to pause here for just a minute or two to let people start rolling in. We're glad you can join us this morning for the Minnesota Crossroads Career Network webinar. Welcome. Hello. We're going to hopefully be able to get started here shortly. We've got people rolling in. I'm glad to see each of you coming. And one of the unique things about the webinars we've done online the last few years is we've been able to attract people from all over the country, which is really pretty amazing. In fact, we've had people from all over the world. We've had people log in from the UK, from Africa, from Australia, I think from every continent that I can recall over the last few years, which is amazing. I don't know what time it is in those places when they're logging on, but I'm glad to have people join us. Well, I'll get started here. My name is 𝙎𝙤𝙗 𝙎𝙚, and I welcome you to the Minnesota Crossroads Career Network webinar this morning. I lead Crossroads here in the Minneapolis area, and glad to be able to offer these presentations and speakers for your benefit. Job search can be an emotional roller coaster, and the more input that you get that can help you be more effective and give you hopefully some hope and encouragement in the process is a great thing. And so we're always glad to be able to have people participate. And there's at the end of our speaker today, 𝙍𝙬𝙗 is going to be speaking, but when he's done, I'll be doing an overview of all the other ways you can get plugged into Crossroads as well and take advantage of the resources we have available for you. There's a lot of things we have. We have a lot of people that volunteer to provide all the different resources for you, and hopefully you can take part of in multiple things. Our hope with Crossroads is to provide the best help and resources for your job search that we possibly can, while also pointing to the encouragement and hope of Jesus Christ. Many frustrations in our life, especially in a job search sometimes, are when we don't get what we think we want. Sometimes it's even something we may be praying for, like a specific job. It's a good thing, but maybe it doesn't come through. What I often forget, though, is that God knows things that I don't know, that he can see around corners that I can't. As an example, say I'm walking down a street and come to an intersection, and the light turns green in my direction, and so I step off the curb to cross the street, but in stepping down, I trip and I fall. And I get humiliated and upset and frustrated because I never trip like that. However, what I didn't know was that a speeding car was coming that ran through the red light. Had I stepped out further into the street, I would have been hit. So was that fall a good thing or a bad thing? And, sometimes we just don't realize how sometimes bad things can actually be good for us. And the Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. The best way to think of that passage is that when you trust him with your life and are committed to following him, he will change the desires of your heart. He'll give them to you. He'll change the desires of your heart to be more in alignment with him. He wants the best for us. So sometimes when we don't get something we think is good for us, like a particular job, maybe, he may be protecting us from something we didn't know or see. We can be thankful for that. Let me open with a word of prayer, and we'll jump into the rest of the content this morning. Lord, we just are grateful that we're able to come together for, even if it's virtually, even if we're not seeing each other, but that we can participate in things that can be helpful. We pray that you use this morning for your purposes, that each person here has specific needs and desires and situations in their life that only you know fully. We pray that everyone here can walk away with something useful for them today, that they gain hope and encouragement, and that somehow through this process they get drawn closer to you as well. Lord, we thank you for everything that's before you here, and we pray that it honors you. In Jesus' name, amen. With that, let me, I've got a short video here for you. And we get this up on the screen. Wayne Simien played basketball for Kentucky and then went on into the NBA and played for the Miami Heat, and thought he had it all, as sometimes we do, but learned that he didn't. And love to have him share his story here. Let me get this up properly. but it'll be a short video, and then I'll come back and we'll introduce Dale.
I remember one particular moment that I think really brought me to a low point. We just finished winning, big game, big nationally televised game. Played well. The team had played well, and I can remember being out.
You know what? Sorry, I think I didn't have the sound properly. Let me try this again, and we'll get it correct this time around. Apologize for that technical difficulties. Here we go. Wait, let me rewind this.
I can remember one particular moment that I think really brought me to a low point. We just finished winning, a big game, big nationally televised game. I played well. The team had played well, and I can remember being out celebrating afterwards. I can remember having some random guy, didn't know who he was, coming up to me, and he basically said, "Man, Wayne, I wish I had your life." I remember as soon as he said that, it was literally like I got punched in the face. On the inside, he really didn't know what was going on. He didn't really understand the gravity and the magnitude of the unfulfillment that I had in my heart. It started out just as a young boy with a carefree attitude, who was gifted with some athletic ability and who just really enjoyed to play sports. Just began to excel at basketball, and that's when things kind of changed. I began to receive some notoriety because of my athletic ability to win some awards, and what was once just something that I did for fun then turned into something that became a selfish ambition to receive more glory from other people and from the things that I could attain from it. Just as I began to excel and to achieve my dreams, whether it was in terms of championships, in terms of going to the university that I'd always dreamed of, playing at the University of Kansas, winning conference championships there and going to Final Fours, having a future in the NBA, having access to drugs and alcohol and girls. Basically, during that time, I had everything that the world said should make you happy as a 20-year-old college athlete. But yet, because I was so performance driven, because I was so worried about what other people thought about me and wanted to gain their approval, that at the first sign of any conflict, any struggle, whether it was a loss, whether it was a poor performance, whether it was an injury, whether it was public ridicule in the papers or by fans, emotionally I would just be crushed. Just remember crying out to God for him to show me someone or something. Lord, show me something that's truly worth giving my life to. A few weeks later, I would run into some Christians. They shared with me the gospel in a dynamic way. They told me about Jesus Christ and the things that he had done with his life. They shared with me how he died for the forgiveness of my sins and that he had a purpose and a plan for my life. And that's something that I'd never heard before. That God had something for me to do here on earth. I gave my life to the Lord in July 12, 2003. and my life was completely transformed from the inside out. I had played for myself and played for the applause of the crowd for so long that I really had no idea how to compete outside of that. And God had to show me how to do that. He showed me that I could compete and that I could play for His glory, that I could compete and play and live as an act of worship to Him for what He had done. And when that became the motivation of why I stepped on that court, that's where the freedom came, to where it didn't matter if I scored 30 points or if I didn't score any points at all. That if the posture of my heart, if the posture of how I lived, if the motivation for why I did things was to glorify and honor God, that I knew at the end of the day He would be pleased with me. As that became the motivation of why I played, those were the two best years of my career. I became an All-American, Big 12 Player of the Year, and because of the freedom that came from playing and competing for Jesus. When I first walked into the locker room, there was a lot of skepticism. They heard that I was a Christian, and their comments were, "This won't last long." It was really intimidating. I can even remember a few of the guys, on the side, literally taking cash money bets on me with how long it would take me to fall. As time went on, as my rookie year had passed, and I had remained firm in my faith and began to have the opportunities to share with my teammates in the NBA locker room and how Jesus had transformed my life, that's when I began to start to feel their support. They began to pull for me. It was amazing the lesson that I learned from that. It's not necessarily the championship ring, celebrating with champagne in the locker room, parade in the city, hoisting the championship trophy, but it was seeing how quickly that glory would fade. Moving on to the next year as the team struggled, swept out of the playoffs, and I could remember the Lord bringing a scripture verse to mind after that championship. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 24, "The man in all his glory are like the flowers in the grass of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but it's only the word and the will of God that stands forever." Seeing how that eternal truth had matched up directly with the experience of winning that championship, it's really when the Word of God and His will became something that I wanted to completely pursue. And it's really something that led me to step away from professional basketball and to be a part of something that's not only going to influence and change my life, but have the influence to change the lives of so many people around me. And not just for a moment's time, but for eternity. It's a great feeling in knowing who you were made to be and to know what you were made to live for. My name is 𝙤𝙤𝙗 𝙎𝙚, and I am second.
There we go. When we hit career highs, or when we something in our personal life goes really well, it's easy to feel like, I've got this locked in now and everything's going to go great. But boy, for every high there's a low, and for every low there's other times we bounce back. And I've heard people say a lot of times, when you're going through tough times, that this too shall pass. And that's true. But, when times are going really well, unfortunately, this too shall pass. And, if you're only living for those highs in your life, it can be incredibly frustrating and incredibly discouraging. And so having something else, most importantly, having realizing who you're living for, that Christ came for us to be able to be in relationship with him, and that's what matters more than anything else. It makes an incredible difference to the rest of our lives, in terms of our careers, in terms of our personal lives, and everything else. With that, I'm really glad to be able to introduce Dave Fruhoff. Dale. So it's the first time I messed up his last name. Now I messed up his first name.
That's my dad. It's all good.
Is that right? Okay, good. Well, before the end of the morning here, I'll get it right. But I've got to know Dale a little bit over the last year or two, and just really have come to appreciate him. Dale is the VP of HR at Presbyterian Homes. He has held CHRO and other HR leadership roles at a number of great companies, including did a stint at United Health Group here locally before he moved out to Oregon. He'll tell you all the details in his presentation. But with his own transition in his job, he learned a lot in terms of seeing things from both sides of the table, and that's what he's going to talk about today, in terms of what you're experiencing, what he's experienced, and what an employer sees in the process as well. And hopefully it helps you as you navigate your job search process. Dale, I'm very glad to turn it over to you, and you've got the next hour.
Great. Thank you so much, Harry. It's great to be here, and I just appreciate all that you all are doing here. Let me get my screen set up here, and Harry will tell me if it's not looking right, but hopefully it is. Again, really a pleasure to be here, and I would really want this to be meaningful to all of you. That's number one. I want this to hopefully there's something in here that you take away that's useful. There may be even something in here that you disagree with, and that's perfectly all right. There's a lot of subjectivity to these strategies around these things. But again, thanks for letting me be here. I appreciate your comments and questions. And if Harry didn't mention this, feel free to send them in the chat throughout, and we will either take them at the end or we'll take them as we go. Either way is fine. I'm pretty flexible on that. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit more time to hear your questions as well. So I just want to kind of do that. So yeah, I want to share a little bit about both sides from the table. As you said, I'm Dale Fruhoff, and I'm here based in the Twin Cities. And let me introduce myself a little bit. So what we'll go over a little bit is my background. I'll share with my executive bio just very quickly. Then the candidate side of the desk, telling you a little bit about my journey out west, and then 12 years later coming back here to Minnesota. It's great to be back, and the importance of having an agile search strategy, how to establish your brand, your market, and your brand plan, and understanding and how to articulate your passion, skills, while meeting business needs. Those three are really important. And then the other side of the desk, what does HR look for? What do hiring managers look for? You probably know a lot of this, but I think there'll hopefully be some insights there from my perspective on that. What are the top criteria for choosing a new role? And then again, we'll wrap up with some questions and answers. We'll have plenty of time for that. So first of all, my background. I got my family here on the left. I was born and raised here in Minnesota, and been married to my wife Karen for 26 years. She's a physical therapist. She actually does work for Presbyterian Homes and a couple of other places, Maple Grove Hospital, for example, as a PT. We've got 4 kids, and then my oldest has his girlfriend Karina there with him, and so we enjoy Minnesota sports, as you can see. I'm also a musician on the side. Never tried to make a living at that, but played actually music with my dad Dave. He's 87, and we actually enjoy playing mostly senior places about once or twice a month. I am a pro bono career counselor. Just happen to help people. I love paying it forward, and as I can, and as mentioned earlier, an HR professional. So one of the things that I think is really important, and I know you may not be able to read this, and that's not exactly the intent anyway, although if anybody wants it, I'm happy to forward it on, is to have an executive summary. Having your elevator pitch really kind of honed in with that. So for me, and I haven't done my elevator pitch for a while, so forgive me if I'm a little clunky here, but hi, I'm Dale Fruhoff. I'm looking for a number 1, number 2 HR position for a mid-sized company or a regional or a divisional head of HR for a larger firm. I love high growth organizations, and I've had a lot of experience in healthcare and manufacturing and in the service industry. I'm based in the Twin Cities and looking for help with a role like that. So that's an example of a kind of just an easy kind of elevator pitch. Everyone should have those. They should be brief like that. And then thinking about your brand, how does your brand align? If you can articulate what I just said for yourselves on your target opportunities, it'll help others help you. I've been in a lot of networking meetings, and sometimes I have to ask about 20 minutes in now, how can I help you? They still haven't articulated what they're looking for. It's great to get to know people, but you want to kind of get to the point too. So that's helpful. Also, your marketing brand. The top of mind here happens to say building people, capabilities, and culture. Those are two things I'm really passionate about. And so for that, that's part of my brand is how to build that out. Another piece that I'd like to share is being results orientated. And when we talk about resumes in a minute too, I'm a real big proponent of focusing on what you got done, not just your job description. So if you kind of look at this, and again, you may not be able to read it, apologize for that, but it talks about integrating lean principles, building multiple leadership teams, diversifying teams, building up HR capabilities, for example. So very specific. This isn't as quantifiable with numbers like a resume might be, but it shows that you get things done. What makes you unique over your competition? These are your value differentiators. There's a lot of people that do what's up here, although I think you'll have good things up here. The value differentiators are really, really important too. What's a little unique? For example, I spent a couple of years learning lean production system beyond just HR. Most HR professionals don't have that. Got a lot of mergers, acquisitions experience, state-of-the-art tools and techniques, working for multi-global companies. Those are some differentiators that I would highlight for myself. And again, back to that elevator pitch. And in addition to that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, there can be a page 2 to this that you bring into your networking meeting. What are those targeted list of companies? I just said I like manufacturing, services, healthcare. So what companies are they? If you're very vague, people will have a hard time helping you. If you're very specific, I'm looking at Abbott, 3M, Target, whatever. They will check their virtual Rolodexes and let you know. So again, this is you incorporated. Who are you? What is your brand? What is your brand? Is it bland or is it exciting? You want to stay true to yourself, but you can be agile in what you emphasize here as well. So let's talk about kind of a little bit my own journey. So back in 2008, my wife and I had a 7-year-old and 3-month-old twins at the time, and a little younger there in that picture. And we decided in 2007, right when I started to work for United Health Group on an interim basis, leading talent acquisition for Ngenix at the time. It was a turnaround situation. I was there for 9 months, but I knew we were going to move to Oregon. So I started networking back in September 2007. I probably had about 125 meetings or so. I had my marketing and my brand, maybe not quite as well honed as it is today. And I made periodic trips out there, went to a lot of coffee places, didn't know where I was driving, but I met up with a lot of people. And lo and behold, this is how this works. It's the magic of networking. Met a group of HR people, and they introduced me to someone at a meeting. And what did I do? Well, I asked him, I said, do you have some people that you would recommend that I meet with? Which is always one of the questions you want to ask. He gave me about 3 people, so I connected with all of them. One of them was a senior HR person at Intel, premier company out in the Portland area. And they had heard about this job at Genentech and told the recruiter to contact me, and the rest is history. So with all that networking and digging my well before I was thirsty, as Harvey McKay would say, I actually received 2 job offers within 12 hours of each other. Maybe a little bit of bragging there. I'll call that the Lord's just provision there, and definitely picked the right one as head of HR up in Oregon there, companies based in San Francisco. So the lessons there are to dig your well before you're thirsty. Always be networking, even after you land. Don't stop it. Pay it forward. I learned being local really helps. It was tough. Yes, I'm going to move. Well, people don't always buy into that. So that's something that sometimes you can't control. So we actually moved out to Oregon as a leap of faith. I didn't have a job in August when we moved out there. If you see that in August, we arrived in the Portland area. I didn't get a job until September, but God was good and was able to land there. So learn persistence is key. Lots of meetings, prayer, of course, showing passion for what I do. That has to show through with what you're doing, and being positive. It's always disappointments, but you want to be able to move that forward. So fast forward, and that's where I learned a lot of my best practices too in HR out there. I won't cover everything here, but moving back to Minnesota 12.5 years later in April 2021. Wow, what a difference. Well, I knew I was going to be moving back a few months earlier. So started networking even virtually before we moved back. And again, moved back without a job, a little bit of a theme for me, not recommending it. But when we arrived in Minneapolis, it was during COVID. The George Floyd thing was going on. As you probably know, there was unrest in Portland. Some people joke, "Why did you go from Portland to Minneapolis?" It's sort of like going from one to the same to the same. We had a lot of unrest in both cities, right? But that made it challenging to get a job. Had to work a little bit harder. In fact, I would say it was more of a virtual job search because of COVID, and a lot of companies, and I'll just be candid, said, "We won't hire you because you're a white male." I had 8 of those conversations, and they weren't subtle. They were very in your face. This is just how it is. A lot of times that they have a very undiverse leadership team. So the HR person, we want to make that our diversity hire. And I don't say that as a victim mindset, because I believe everybody on this call probably has experienced some level of, let's just say, some kind of discrimination for whatever reason. If you're a woman, you could be discriminated against. If you're older, if you're younger, a different race, all sorts of things can happen. So I wasn't unique there, and that's where that positivity comes back. You stay positive, you move on. You don't worry about that, and you don't want to work for a company that doesn't want you anyway. So a little bit wiser, definitely older. So as you get older, I think it is a little bit harder to land for many companies, depending. But the persistence thing was key for me at going into Presbyterian Homes. And this is an example of being bold as well. Maybe a little bit foolish, but I actually knew that I heard a rumor about Presbyterian Homes might need somebody to help them in HR. I went on their website, and lo and behold, the chairman of the board was a old church friend of mine from 20 years ago. His name's Norm. I reached out to Norm. 10 minutes later, he called me back, and it took a couple of months, but I didn't hear anything. And he said he was talking to the CEO, but nothing was really happening. So one day in April, I just called up the CEO directly, called his office, got his assistant. I thought, wow, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. Turned out great. We had a breakfast meeting about a week later, and which turned into a second breakfast meeting later in the summer. It was a very long process. I know you have to be patient here, right? That's another P that we could put at the bottom here, I'm sure. But eventually I was able to land and start as the VP of HR at Presbyterian Homes. So a couple lessons there: build your network, continue to connect, don't give up, be persistent, and be persistent in prayer as well. Keep that passion and positivity as you're going forward, no matter what the message is that you're getting. That can be tough, but we'll talk about that in a minute, how we can kind of work through that. But change is all around us, right? I came back to a very different Minneapolis than I left 12.5 years ago. And so we need to be nimble and agile. And so I recommend a multi-prong approach to your search strategy. And most people prefer one or the other based on how we're wired, how God made us, and that's fine. And it's great, actually. But these are all important. So when I think about the left brain approach, leading with data, how do you find out what the opportunities are? And how do you do a little bit more research? So one of the things that I did was get a hold of a Dun & Bradstreet report, get a download, an Excel document. You can get this from Dun & Bradstreet of every organization based in Minnesota. And then you filter it like crazy, right? Because it's way, way too much. You dig a little deeper on some of the ones as you do your filtering. Look at Hoover's for more information. Pull book of lists. I'm saying et cetera there because there's a lot of other data sources, but you're really just trying to generate what are the possible organizations out there. If you've never done a Boolean search, I would recommend that you look that up. Simple thing like look up, just go to Google or whatever your search engine is and type in CEO, the word and, Minnesota, and healthcare. Just do that and see what happens. What you'll see is, wow, here's a whole bunch of healthcare CEOs that I want to go into healthcare. These are probably some people I'd love to meet. It's that quick and easy. You can do that for a lot of things. A lot of people don't know about that. So I recommend that left brain approach as one part of the approach there. The other piece is the right brain approach, which is the classic networking, right? Face-to-face is always best. My challenge to you or encouragement is try to connect with as many hiring managers and above as you can. It's difficult sometimes to make those connections, but talking to the CEOs or the owners or whatever level is appropriate for you is good. Everyone's great, but make sure you're spending enough time there. Have a target list of organizations. Well, where did we get that from? Well, that's from our left brain approach up here. We want to make sure that we have some lists. It could be 10, it could be 50. You decide how you want to manage that. I wouldn't go too big on that. And then ask for help directly. And as I said earlier, use judgment, but be bold. So calling up the CEO's office isn't always the boldest thing to do, but sometimes it pays off. A quick other story. This is when I was very young in my career. I wanted a job at Cargill. I didn't have a clue how to go about it. I went into the lobby, this is the old days, and said, I'm interested in talking to somebody about this position. And they said, well, they're not, do you have an appointment? I said, no. I said, I'll wait. So the funny story was, they didn't want me sitting in the lobby. 10 minutes later, they brought me in and I interviewed for the position, and I made it through 2 rounds. I didn't get hired there, maybe for good reason, but maybe you don't do that these days. But that was something that I did. It was a bold move, and sometimes you have to take those bold moves. Also offering to help, paying it forward, right? So when you're working with networking meetings, I was asking people, how can I help you? Of course, I'm sure you all do that, but also paying it forward and then thanking people as well. What's surprising to me is the number of people who land who don't thank me. It's going up, and I don't worry about it. It's just interesting to always be appreciative of that and make sure that you're circling back, keeping them informed. The last approach here is to create a job. And so versus just applying for positions, chasing roles. So how do you connect dots to do that? We're going to talk a little bit about that in the upcoming slides, but that's another strategy here. For example, what are gaps that you're seeing on a leadership team? Is somebody's just moved out of a role? What's the rumor mill? The reason I went to Press Homes originally was there was a rumor they needed some help in HR by an outside person. And it turned out they did. So the role that I had was a role that was created. That's partly why it took so long, by the way. So that's another strategy for us for you to think about. So as you build your targeted job list, and also look at great companies that may not have a role, we also want to think of, again, going back to your brand a little bit. So for me, LinkedIn is great. It's with us. It's probably more important than the resume these days. Some say it has become the resume. You still need a resume, of course. But one of the things it says is things that people like to talk about. So I have some things in here around leadership, talent acquisition, talent management, things like that. Make it interesting for your network. If you've never posted, you're never posting things out there, even sharing something that you've already seen out there, you get much more interesting if you're able to add some content there. And also know who you're connected with. So you can see I've got over 2,000 followers. I think I have about 1,800 people that I'm connected with. Do I know them all? Well, of course not. I hopefully knew most of them, and some maybe have slipped my mind, but I try to only connect with people that I know and respect. A few exceptions there. There's a head of a executive search firm. I may connect with them, even if I haven't met them yet. But I try to be selective about that, and would recommend the same for you. So when you think about your brand strategy here, you've got your LinkedIn profile, and we won't, there's a whole seminars on how to do that well. You've got your executive profile or executive bio. This is, I call it your calling card. I would send this out before you meet with somebody in advance so they can get to know you a little bit, so you can be more efficient there. And then what are your targeted list of industries, companies, and search firms that you bring? Maybe that page 2 behind that executive summary, so they can help you. People want to help you. The more specific you can be, the more they'll be able to help. That's where you'll have a productive meeting. Sometimes your meetings are only 20 minutes. You got to stick to that time. Try to get to the point with your elevator pitch fairly early. Obviously, you want to connect on a personal level, but you also want to be respectful of their time. So when you think about your brand and marketing, and let's turn the tables a little bit now, and how HR and hiring managers, how do they think about the candidate? So first of all, human resources, or even the talent acquisition person, or their screener, maybe a sourcer, they may have some knockout questions. So they're going to focus more on selection over recruiting. What I mean by that is, who can I screen out? I've got 50 resumes. I got to get it down to 5 for my hiring manager. So sometimes their mindset is a little bit more about that. So know what those knockout questions are if you can. What are the must-haves? I use a 10-second rule to make an impression. Have a friend or even yourself look at your resume for 10 seconds. What pops out of the resume? What did you get from that? If someone doesn't take an interest in 10 seconds, they're probably not going to read it much longer. So the other question that an HR a screener or sourcer is going to ask you is, do you have any connections at our firm? So making those network connections is key. The more connections you have, it's going to open up doors, of course. And are you authentic or passionate? Recently, I was talking to an executive recruiter. I said, how's your search going, about a particular search? And she said, well, the CEO didn't like the candidates. And I said, really? Why? She goes, well, they had all the skill, but they just didn't have the passion. They just didn't have the energy. I thought, wow, I wonder if they knew that when they were interviewing, that how they were showing up. Just kind of crossed my mind. So from the hiring manager's perspective, a good one will focus both on selection and recruiting. They're going to be screening, but they're also going to be saying, hey, I want you to come on board with me. If they're screening resumes, they're going to give it the 10 to 30 seconds too. If they like it, then they're going to dive into it a little bit more. So when you think about your resume, and I said this earlier, a lot of people, I'd say maybe the majority, and their resumes put down job descriptions. If you're let's see, if you're a purchasing manager, and everyone knows what a purchasing manager does. They buy stuff, right? And they do a lot more than that, of course. But if you just put down what you do, everyone already knows what a purchasing manager does. They're hiring for that. They really know what it is. But what value did you bring? How much money did you save? How did you leverage strategic accounts, et cetera? Those are the things that you want to make sure on your resume. If you can quantify those with dollars, with time savings, efficiencies, satisfaction metrics, the better. What did you do? What was the result of that? So that really talks about the what. And then how you did it matters as well. That behavioral piece, if you could bring that in, the human piece is really, really important there as well. So for myself, just to highlight a little bit from my resume, as an example, the one over to the left is a random internet one. So the top of it says Chief Human Resources Officer, Chief People Officer, VP HR. And then my little summary here is a little bit of like my sales pitch, but a little different for this audience. So you can read it there. Senior business HR leader who delivers results through leadership, strategic partnerships, operational expertise, driving positive change in organizations, significant global experience. Now, if I'm interviewing for a non-global company, I might modify that a little bit. But that's an example of what you want to do. Again, you want to grab the reader at the very top of your resume. By the way, a lot of AI engines only read the top third or half of, or 2/3 of your first page of your resume. Make sure everything on that first page is your most important stuff. Another way to help AI like you, as it were, is to use some key terms. I personally use the term core competencies. You can use whatever, but I list out all these words here. Now, every one of these, and if you have these, you'll be able to back them up with behavioral examples of here's what you did, here's my experience with these things. But these words are really important to grab either the reader or the AI, the bot, whatever, to make sure that they're flagging you. And have that on LinkedIn as well, because they also do the same kind of technology. They're looking for words like talent acquisition if they're looking for that, or transformational change, lean, whatever it is. So a couple of additional thoughts on sourcing strategies. So when you think about this, who's nearing retirement or changing roles? So if you have a friend with a LinkedIn seat, a recruiter seat on LinkedIn, they are your new best friend because they can actually get you some of this information. So when you look at LinkedIn, one of the things I like to do, again, this is the create a job strategy, is where is a gap with your name on it? If I go to a 700 employee organization, because HR is a lot about headcount primarily, and their highest level HR person is a director, and they're 700 in 5 states, I think they may need somebody a little more senior. No offense to the people that are there. And I pursued some of those. And sometimes you find out the CEO is just not on board and you move on. That's one strategy. Who's recently left the company? So this is where LinkedIn Recruiter can be helpful. I had a friend do this for me when I was in transition. So who are all the HR people in town that have left their role in the last 90 days? And you go out to their former company's pages, and a good chunk of them hadn't posted the position yet. Why? Because HR usually does that, probably. So there's a strategy for you to think about. And then obviously in the news, who's growing, merging, investing, changing, and which markets are the strongest? What rumors are you hearing? That's where the networking is good. And I would even ask your network contacts there, what are you hearing out there? What's happening? Who's growing? It's also a numbers game, though. So there is a portion of your work. It's probably the hardest part for most of us. Cold calling potential contacts or cold messaging them in LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn Premium. I have a benefit manager opening right now. I sent out like 10 messages to benefit managers. And my message is, I have a job for you. So it was like, wow, I heard back from 2 out of 10. And that's probably going to be typical for you too. But you never know. It's a numbers game. So the more contacts you can make, either through LinkedIn or calling people, reaching out, the better. Obviously, you want to get referred whenever you can. But sometimes cold calling is okay too. People respect the hard work. Have a contact management system too. There's so much to keep track of. 250 contacts that I have, they're all arranged in a spreadsheet. Who it was, when did I meet with them, who connected me, when, and what's the follow-up. So I'm able to manage that. It's not a beautiful, perfect thing, but it really, really helps me. Even today, I can go back and say, oh yeah, that's how I met this person. It's really helpful to keep your network up. And then do the top search firms know you? You want to be known with the search firms. Boutique search firms too get some really good searches. So I recommend that you try to make some connections there, and again, make sure that they know your status. So when we think about what we want to do with our next job or your next career, and then I think this is really key to understanding both sides of the desk. And I like to coach people that are in transition. I even use this for young people that are finding their first job. To think about a career change or a new career, think about it in the context of what is your passion, what is your skill, and what is your business need. So passion, do you love what you do? That just comes forward. Boy, I'd love to do this all day. Obviously, skill is what you're good at. And the business need is, what does a company need? And so have you done research on this in terms of what an organization is looking for? So you can come in and predict that a little bit. So let's see how these circles intersect a little bit. So if you're passionate about something and you're good at it, say you love to fly model airplanes, you're probably not going to make a career out of that, I'm pretty sure. Pretty expensive hobby from what I hear. That would be a hobby for you, right? There's no business need out there for model airplane flying that I know of. Perhaps there is. Have to invent that. What if you're passionate about something and there's a business need, but you don't have the skill? Well, then you're kind of a rookie, or there's a development opportunity. Nothing wrong with that. Every job should have some stretched parts to it. So I think that's actually a positive, but it's something to be aware of when you're thinking about, how you're showing up. Now, you're good at something and there's a business need, but you just don't like doing it. Well, that's a chore. And I would say pretty much every job I've ever had has some aspect that's a chore of it, whether it's filing expense reports or reviewing affirmative action plans or whatever the thing is that you don't like doing, but you can do it. hopefully not too much of it. But really what we're looking for is that sweet spot. How do we align our passion skills with the business needs? If you can find a role that does all three of those, then you're not compromising, hopefully, if there's a good culture fit on top of that. And that's really what you want to do. So with this in context, let's take a look at, again, from both sides of the desk, what's the candidate perspective about this? So articulating your three circles. Now, a business isn't going to necessarily think in these terms of circles, but you can articulate it. I love doing this. I'm passionate about it. I'm good at it. And I see that it could really help your organization. What a great sentence to tell a hiring manager, right? Showing your passion for that. Your passion will just come out if it's there. You're demonstrating a willingness to learn if it's something that you're not as good at. Nothing wrong with that. For example, I'm just starting, hold me accountable here, Harry, to getting certified as an executive coach in my spare time. I just don't have a lot of spare time at the moment. But that's something I'm aspiring to do and to learn and grow. That's for me personally. And then again, know the business needs and speak to them going into an interview, not just looking at the website, but hopefully going a little bit deeper. So that's the candidate perspective. When we think about this from the hiring manager's perspective, there's really 3 or 4 questions that they're thinking about or answers that they need. Maybe this sounds flippant, but no matter what questions you get asked and all the prep you do for any question, you need to do that. There's really the hiring managers really only needs to know 3 or 4 things. And the first one is, can they do the job? Can you do the job? Which is right, which is skill. Will they do the job? Well, some of that's passion, right? It's their motivation. Do we have that? Does it show up? Now I added this one, kind of a 4th one here in the middle. Will they add significant value? So that's the business need. How will they help contribute to the organization? And then the last one, which is probably the most important, and I'm sure you've heard of it, is will they fit into the organization? That is the hardest one. And there's a lot of different aspects of that. But ultimately, a good hiring manager will only hire somebody's 4 out of 4. If you don't hit all 4 of those, they shouldn't consider you for hire. They might say they don't have the skill, but we'll train it. That's great. Sometimes we have to do that, depending on the market. But let's take a quick look at these other fit factors. And this is definitely a partial list. For example, competitive versus collaborative. When I lived in Portland, I got to visit and even interview some Nike people that were out there. They have a highly competitive culture, as you may imagine. They actually compete in meetings, almost like you're on the field, like a football field. And there's winners and losers, and it's a little crazy. Versus Presbyterian Homes, highly collaborative. Takes us a long time to make decisions. Okay, so which one are you? And that goes back to the next one, is speed and pace. How fast a pace are you versus the organization? And by the way, if somebody's interviewing you, you want to match the pace of whatever they're at too. And then what are their values, beliefs? What are the ethics? What are the unwritten rules? Really find out. Asking culture questions is really, really important. You want to know as much as them. It's just going to be a fit for you too. I just heard from a friend that I helped land a position back in Oregon, and he said, the last 6 months have been miserable. I'm like, why? And he said, I'm just not happy here. It's just not a good fit for him. So he's looking for something new. That can happen. And then prioritization principles. Now, this one's a little more vague, but what I'm getting at is, how does a company, what is their number one? They might say their people are number one. Find out if that's true. Is it customer number one? If you're working for a PE-backed firm, they might be more financially driven. So just being aware of what those are, and because that will affect decision-making for sure. So let's fast forward now. You have an opportunity, or you're looking at a couple of offers, hopefully on the table. What is the top criteria for choosing an opportunity? And you could even say no to one. I've done that before. I did say no to some things before I landed at Press Homes. So the company is first. To me, that's number one, and I'll explain why. Your boss is second, and the job is third. So why is it that company is first? Well, first of all, the company is not going to change. They might say they're going to change. Trust me, they're not going to change that much. Your boss is second. If you had a raise of hands, if I could see you, how many of you have had a boss change while you've been in a role? all of us would probably raise our hands. Your boss will not always be your boss. And even your own job is going to change and morph once you're there. So that's why I say these are all very, very important. But pick the company first, boss second, and your job third. You want check marks for all three, but those are the priorities that I would recommend. So I know job search can be hard and long. You saw mine was a bit long. And so let's talk a little bit about how we sustain energy and momentum into the job search. This is my densest slide of the whole thing. I apologize for that, but I think there's some good things here. Some of these we've already kind of covered. So on the do's and don'ts, the first one under do's is set clear goals each day. Maybe 5 to 10 contacts per day you're reaching out to, 5 meetings a week. What are those goals that you want to have? Think of it as a job. Try to meet in person at their convenience. I always prefer that over Zoom. It makes a big difference if you can swing it. I went to about every coffee shop in Portland, and trust me, they have a lot of them. Years later, I figured out, where was I? Oh, I've been in this coffee shop before. So lots of coffee shops. Be concise in your meetings, as I said. Stick to the allotted time and keep them informed if they're open to that. In fact, I would say, hey, do you mind if I keep in touch with you? They'll always say yes, but it's always good to ask. Set your search hours. I think 30 to 32 hours a week for me is about what I would average, is what I would do. I hit over 40 sometimes, but there is a risk of burnout. This is tough work. It's harder than a job. And I understand that. So be good to yourself. Take care of yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually through all of this. Have a support group or a confidant. You're going to need to vent. There's a lot of frustrations out there, a lot of waiting. Have a safe place to do that, and don't do it elsewhere. And it probably goes without saying, don't talk negatively about your past employers as much as you can avoid that. It's a bit of a red flag for the hiring manager. And then help your peers, your competition. So years ago, I was in transition in the Twin Cities, and there was 3 of us that were all basically peers. We were all senior HR people looking for a job. And we decided to form a pact. And our pact was, we're going to help each other land. We're going to share everything that we know. Some of us were literally interviewing for the same jobs. We would tell the other person how it went, what it was like, giving them the advantage even. And what was really cool about it was all of us landed. Some of the recruiters were really not happy about us doing this, by the way. I'm not saying it's a best practice, but we cared about each other as much as we cared about ourselves. So fast forward, I'm in line. I landed at Ceridian as a VP of HR. I'm on my first business trip, in line to get on the airplane, and I look up, and there, right in front of me, is one of the 3 people. She was on her first business trip. She joined Thomson Reuters. So it was really fun to see that. We all landed, like I said, because in the end, it's who's the best fit. So something to think about. So let's go to the don'ts here. A little more negative, but important. Don't spend too much time looking at job postings. That can be a real time waster. Don't get too up or too down. It is a roller coaster. I know, just try to keep things more even keel as best you can, so you're not too up or too down. Don't stop momentum when you're getting close to a job. I've seen this happen several times with people in 2 ways. They either stop momentum and then they don't get the job and they have to restart, which is really frustrating, or they actually do keep it going and they get a second opportunity at the last minute. So really recommend you keep that going. Don't overcompromise. Stay in the driver's seat. Make sure you're making the decision. If recruiters don't return your messages, don't get too upset about it. They will contact you when they're ready to do that. Their job is, of course, is to land their clients' candidates, not get you a job. Don't oversell change management. I mentioned this earlier. I did this before. I know this from experience. If you oversell how you've changed things in an organization, you may scare people away. I know they say they want to bring change. Trust me, just limit that a little bit. It's okay to talk about it, but don't overdo it. And then again, don't link in with people that you don't know or respect. I think that's really important. You want to keep your reputation online as much as you can. And you can always unlink with people too, of course. So those are a couple of, more than a couple of do's and don'ts for your own job search there. So as we wrap up here this part, and again, I encourage you with your questions, I wanted to give you a couple of words of encouragement. The first one is God has created you in his image, and he's gifted you in ways that are unique to only you, and they're special to you. I know he has a plan for you, and he's faithful to those who call upon his name. And lastly, with a scripture verse, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave or forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. It's from Deuteronomy. So with that, I will we'll move over to comments and questions if there are any, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Harry, I think that's the right approach at this point.
Sounds good. So much good information there. Certainly, people be sure to type in any questions or comments or reactions to anything you heard into the chat box, and they'll be able to address those. There was so much good content in there. I jotted down a few notes for myself that I hadn't really thought about. One of them that you just mentioned here a little bit ago, which I hear people do this all the time. They keep going on and on about how they're great at change management, and you're right, that does disturb some organizations. That we want things to change, but we're not looking for somebody to turn the world upside down here in our organization. Right. And that's the danger sometimes when you oversell that ability. I mean, it's good to mention it, but don't dwell on that. And I talk to people that's the primary thing that they focus on and want to emphasize about their background. Great information. Any questions or comments? Things that hit you as something that you can apply that were meaningful or that you hadn't thought of before? Jot it into the chat box so that others can benefit from the idea as well.
I do have one more little story I'd like to share with you. It's kind of a funny one as people are thinking about their questions or comments. So my father was actually a guidance counselor, then he became a vocational counselor. So his job was to help high schoolers figure out their career. And so anyway, he went out to Colorado and did this training, and they're in a medium-sized town somewhere. And the guy said, running it said, okay, all of you are going to go out. This is all on foot. There's no Uber, there's no cell phones. This is a long time ago. You're going to figure out something you're really passionate about that you want to connect with somebody about. And you got 3 hours or whatever it was. Go figure it out. That was the whole instruction. So my dad's a banjo player. He used to play at Shakey's, if anybody remembers Shakey's. But anyway, and so he's like, I want to play banjo with a banjo player, a four-string banjo player, which is different than 5 and much more rare. They're in a medium town. So what did he have to do? Well, he started walking around. He found a music store and went in there and said, do you know anybody? And they said, well, there's a guy. And so anyway, but he's not here today, but he comes in sometimes. But sometimes he plays down at this nursing home. So then he walks down to the nursing home, and he's here sometimes, but he's not here now. And I think he went back to the music store, and but he kept networking and asking people, do you know this guy? And he's like talking to people. And this wasn't a matter of hours. Well, lo and behold, he was able to connect with the guy. They grabbed banjos off the wall, because they had banjos in this place, and they got to play banjo together. He did all that in 3 hours without a cell phone, without Uber, or just all on foot, and just being creative. And so the power of networking I think is so important. And I love that story just because the purpose of them doing this is to share with the high schoolers, like, you can connect with anybody you want, or you can find your passion. Just be faithful and persistent, and you'll do it.
Absolutely. I think so many, and you emphasized it so well throughout your presentation, but the importance of networking. So many times people get completely focused on applying for jobs online. And the reality is, as you know, Dale, there's a number of HR research firms that study all kinds of things about organizations, but there's a few of them that produce annual reports on source of hire. Where did companies get the people that they hired that year? And year after year, it's only somewhere between 10 and 15% of their hires were initiated from an online application. And everything else came through referrals or proactive recruiting, either from inside the organization or using agencies or job fairs or campus recruiting or all kinds of other resources. But only 10 to 15% were initiated from an online application. And yet that's where people spend the vast majority of their time. And it's just, you don't want to ignore those, because maybe 10% of the time it might work out, but you certainly want to be talking to as many people. We've got a few comments and questions here. Let me read them.
Sure.
One piece of advice, Wendy says, one piece of advice I would add is, if you get a rejection, respond to the person by thanking them, maybe asking for feedback on how you can do better, and reiterate why you are so interested in working for that company. This was given to me by a networking friend.
Yeah, that's great advice for sure. And that's hard to do, right? You may have lots of emotions going on depending on that, but generally they will share some feedback with you, and it can be really helpful. And that's one of those be bold things, and even follow up with, can you tell me any more? What else? You know, ask the what else question. Sometimes they'll give you a glossy answer that doesn't really help you. You want it. You want that hard information, if there is any. Sometimes it's like, there's two great candidates. Like today, I'm finalizing an offer, and I have to tell the number two, who is absolutely amazing, she's not going to get the job. And so I'm in that side of the table right now, so I can empathize with that and appreciate that. And I definitely want to give her feedback, although I would have hired her in a second too. It's just one of those situations where I was blessed that way.
You know, I think that's one thing a lot of times people don't realize, is that they think, well, if they didn't get the job, they must have done something wrong, or you know, but you don't know who your competition is, and somebody may just have some experience or skill that you don't have, and there's nothing that you can do about it. But you were a great candidate, and certainly, and that's, I think, pretty common, that usually the final two candidates, each of them would be a good choice, and one person has an edge for whatever reason and gets the job, but that doesn't mean the other person was bad or made a mistake.
Right.
You know, along those lines also, though, is to let those organizations know that you would still be interested in other opportunities. You know, I think we assume many times that it's an automatic process, that they'll call you back if something else appropriate opens up, but it's not uncommon that the employer thinks, well, we turned them down before, so they don't like us now, so we're going to have to go look for someone else. But if you let them know that you are still interested, that they're much more likely to reach back out again for future opportunities. So let them know. Have a question here, Dale. Thank you very much. This was great and practical information. 2 questions. As many companies seem to be going through layoffs, what are some ways to identify the health culture of the companies we apply for? And second, how often should we follow up with the contacts to avoid email fatigue from their end? Both good questions.
They're great questions. Yeah, there have been some layoffs there, and that's pretty tough. And you know, certainly when you pick the company first, there are certain industries that are going to always have cyclical layoffs, and so you kind of have to be aware of that. And sometimes it's a first in, first out kind of thing. So depending on kind of what you want to do there. A couple of ways to identify the health culture. Number one is your network. So one thing I've done, this one might give you more information than you need. Certainly you can go to Glassdoor, but be really careful when you read those comments there. Usually people have agendas, and you're not going to get the full story, probably the worst parts and not the best parts. I like to talk to people who used to work for that company, and that's a quick search on LinkedIn. You can actually put that in a filter, you know, who's not there now, but they were there. If you can figure out a couple of those people, that they'll give you probably the true scoop, because they're not there anymore. They'll probably be a little bit more honest. So I think those are all really good things there. And following up with contacts, number one, I think when you're meeting with them, saying, hey, do you mind if I follow up with you in a month or so? You know, and you kind of throw out a timeline there, and you know, and they might say fine, or I'll make it a couple of months, you know, or whatever it is. You know, sometimes I remember helping with a friend one time, and I gave him this whole pitch I gave you all right now, And 3 days later, he landed at Medtronic. He didn't even need my help at all. So you never know when you're going to land and what you need to do and what those follow-ups are. But I think monthly is probably fine, and it can just be or even 45 days to 60 days, somewhere in there. And what I've seen people do is, hey, just a quick update to your valued member of my network, and this can be a little bit of cut and paste. Just to let you know where I'm at. I've updated my target list of companies. Here's a couple I'm looking for. Would love to get reconnected again. So you give them a little more information there. People kind of appreciate that. They're not always going to ping you back, but I think that's always good. Most of the people I network with, I don't hear from much again. A few do, but it's actually pretty rare. So I don't think you're going to fatigue people too much with that, because most people don't have good follow-up on that, and they should. Because a lot of times they'll say, oh, I didn't know you were still in search. Oh, I kind of forgot about you. Sorry. I mean, if they're not being honest, they got a lot going on. So I think every 45 days or so is about right, in my opinion. And if you have some news, share it sooner.
Yeah, totally agree. The follow-up, as you've been saying, both for thank you notes into an organization, as well as thank you notes or follow-ups with networking contacts, is really poor these days. And you really set yourself apart when you do follow up, and very few people do. What networking shouldn't be a one-hit wonder where you have one conversation and that's the end of it. You're building relationships, and that's when it becomes more valuable. And sometimes the second or third conversations are more fruitful than the first ones. Or
and by the way, when you follow up with them, ask them something that you learned about them. Mm-hmm. How's your son's baseball team doing, or whatever? It's like, wow, you remembered something about me.
Yeah, that
will get their attention. In fact, a technique that an executive recruiter does is, that I know, a friend of mine, he'll find out somebody loves fly fishing, and he'll send them an article about fly fishing. There's nothing to do with trying to get his business. Just say, hey, I thought you'd find this interesting. And then, and it's something that it sounds a little tricky, but you can do a little bit of that. And it doesn't all have to be about you and your job search. It could just be about, again, connecting and asking them questions too.
Yeah. One comment about culture that she was asking about is you need to have a good amount of self-awareness to know where you thrive and what kind of culture works for you, because what's one person's heaven is another person's hell. And so
right.
Just having a friend tell you that, oh, you don't want to work there, it's a bad culture. What does that mean to them, and why is it a bad culture? And even companies that have objectively poor cultures, I guarantee there are people there that love their job. And so it's a matter of where do you fit, and what kind of environment works best for you. Comments here. Great presentation. I got a lot of good nuggets to help with my job search. I like the 4 P's: persistence, prayer, passion, and positivity, and most importantly, patience. And
right.
Need that patience for
yes,
sure.
That's great.
Is there any trick to getting more elaborate feedback from companies where you do not get the job? Generally, feedback is limited at best.
Yeah, unfortunately, in this world of litigation, they might be pretty guarded in what they'll share. Mm-hmm. So my generic advice is, don't ask HR for the advice, because they're going to be the worst at giving you advice in terms of being careful. If you can get somebody else in the organization to do it, somebody else you interviewed with, they're gonna hopefully be a little bit more. And again, you could just say, look, I really value your perspective, and is there anything else that you can share? And just say, I really, really appreciate that. But yeah, there's sometimes you're going to be limited there, and you can't force them to say anything. Sometimes it is a little bit tricky. And there might be certain things they're not going to want to disclose, unfortunately. But hopefully you get enough information that you figure it out. One of the most painful things you can do is do a mock interview and videotape yourself. If you haven't done that yet, it's not fun, but wow, you can watch yourself with a coach, even a friend, and say, oh, how did I do? And how did I show up? How did I answer the questions? If you can do that, that's kind of a built-in feedback mechanism too, of something that you might want to try. As painful as it is, we all have smartphones. It's not hard to do. And you will learn something about yourself in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's you're right. It is a painful thing to do, but it's a valuable exercise for sure.
Yes.
Um, one quick comment on the feedback. Absolutely feel free to ask. You're not always going to get answers, but don't use that then as an opportunity to debate them. Then they're going to shut
Right.
down pretty quickly. At that point, if maybe they did misunderstand something you said or misread your background somehow, and that's their feedback of why you didn't get the job. Thank them for their time, thank them for the feedback, and say you'd certainly be interested in talking to them further about it at any time, but don't try to debate them at that point. It's too late to change their mind, and you're probably not going to build a further relationship if you're.
Yeah. And oftentimes the number two, something happens with that number one. They ended up not showing up, or they transfer in 3 months to a different opportunity within the company. Things happen. And that's where, keeping that open, saying, well, I'd still love to join the organization, and I'm going to take your feedback, and I'm going to apply it, and just stay curious with it as best you can. That's where you need that outside venting group, right? Because you might have to let off a little steam over there, but with them, it's game face, and staying curious in that moment is super important.
We have what is HR or hiring manager's obligation when considering a person with a disability? A dilemma is when to disclose as disability. Would it encourage hiring if disclosed during the interview?
Yeah, that's a really good and tough question. It's going to vary by organizations. So certainly when you fill out those obligatory forms about your status and race, and there's one in there about disability these days where you're kind of disclosing it there. It's technically separate from the application, so the hiring manager doesn't see it. So I would say the official answer is, this is a very HR answer, is don't do it till after you get the offer. And then have a conversation about what is the reasonable accommodation to accommodate my disability, whatever that might be. And so if the organization can accommodate it legal, without, undue hardship, they can't rescind the offer. That's the right way to do it. But I can understand it might get you off on a kind of a weird foot. Some people do disclose early. Sometimes disabilities are a little more obvious, and depending on what it is. So, but I would wait till the end and then disclose it during the offer process. At that point would be the best, and then ask them, do you think you're able to accommodate this? And they're probably going to turn white because they don't know the answer, and say, well, I'd be happy to work with you and make this work, that kind of a thing. And many can't. So there's many accommodations that are quite reasonable. And I think in these days, we need to be a lot more sensitive to people with disabilities. And I think organizations are much better. In fact, they may even embrace it more and say, yes, we want to do that. One time when I was at Genentech, we hired a special needs person to work in our warehouse. She actually was state funded, and partly, and she actually had somebody that shadowed her. And this is a highly regulated environment with literally billions of dollars of product. It's a big deal. And we had this woman who has these special needs, and it did more for morale in that group when she was there. They loved her, and it was the most amazing story of employee engagement and support. So those things can be pretty powerful as well, depending on what it is. It's not like you felt sorry for her. It was just like they just loved her. So I think there's opportunity there, but it's hard to predict exactly what organization A or B will do. I would say the more progressive organizations will probably be more welcoming, and old school they might not know what to do, and you might have to help them a little bit with that. So know a little bit of the law, not to throw it in their face, but to help guide them a little bit, and be prepared to do that, at least in a small way.
Absolutely. Dale, the fact that you have led talent acquisition in your roles in the past, I think gives you a unique perspective of how things really work in an organization. And just throughout this whole presentation you did, it was just, I was agreeing with every single point. I've been a recruiter for 36 years. And I think when you're on the hiring end that directly. You see how the market works, how companies operate, what has an impact and what doesn't. And sometimes even, a hiring manager within an organization might not necessarily really get it. And so I really appreciate when somebody like yourself that clearly sees how things work and can relate that effectively, shares all the information. Another comment just came up. Oddly specific question. Okay. Have jury duty coming up for 2 weeks, starting at the week of Thanksgiving. At what point in the interview process should a candidate disclose upcoming jury duty service? Well, that is a specific question, but
Let me take
a pre-planned vacation or other things as well.
Yeah, let me take a little broader approach first, which is number one, your goal when you're in any kind of interaction with a hiring manager, recruiter, your goal is micro. It's get to the next step. That's your goal. It's not to get the job, yes, of course, but it's do everything you can to get to the next step. Don't do anything to jeopardize you getting to the next step, whether that's to a phone screen, whether that's to the first interview, second interview. Don't say or do anything to prevent you from doing that. Once you're in that next step and they're saying, hey, we want to set up follow-up interviews, then, I would probably disclose it then. It kind of depends a little bit on how much they want you. That sounds a little weird, but if you're the leading candidate, they will make accommodations for you. If you're on the bubble, it might push you off. And that's why I'm saying I wouldn't disclose things until you have to. To like, yes, we want to bring you in for the next round. Great. Oh, you know what? And this isn't quite I don't want to fib on this, but oh, you know what? I received a summons recently, you don't have to say when, that I'm going to have to go to jury duty. And so things might be a little bit up in the air. That's probably where I would do that. But you always want to get to that next step and don't do anything to prevent getting to the next step. They'll work with you from there once you're there. I hope that helps. Harry, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but it is an unusual one.
No, well said. And I absolutely agree. The other part of that as well, and it not directly related to this question, but sometimes people opt out of an interview process too early because they think, well, this isn't really the job that I'm that interested in, and so I'm going to decline the next interview. I would say always go through the whole process. You're not obligated to take the job at the end of it.
Yes.
You never know what might happen through that process. There are situations where the company said, at the end of a 4-interview or 5-interview process, they say, we realize this job might not be the best fit for you, but we actually have this other situation and we think, that you'd be a good fit for that. And that's something that's really appealing to you. And you would never have found that out had you not continued through that process. Or you find out things about the job that you didn't understand in the first couple of interviews, and all of a sudden it does become more appealing to you. So always go through. At the very least, if you get an offer and you decide you're not going to take it, it sure feels good to get an offer and know that you're employable, right? And
you're absolutely. And Ashley's question earlier too about feedback, and I think maybe Anita too, was something that it's a great question to ask that just popped into my mind is, if you didn't get the job, well, are there other opportunities in your organization that you think I'd be a good fit for?
Right.
And some of them, half of them aren't even posted yet. I guarantee it. But if the person's in the know, it's like, yeah, we're thinking about adding this role or that role. That's like gold, right? So asking that question, you would never ask it during the interview, but if you're kind of like, it's not going to happen. Well, I picked my company first, the job's my boss second, the job third. The job is important, but I want to be at this company. I want to join your organization. Is there anything else, any other opportunities that we could consider together? What a great statement to make, right? All I can say is I don't think so, or I don't know, but you've got nothing to lose.
Absolutely. Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
I really appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate all these. It's been really great.
Yeah, great discussion. Dale, thanks again. Glad for all your insight and inspiration. I hope people can walk away with a couple of good tidbits that they can put in practice and make a difference in their job search. And that's always the hope with all of our presentations. And you did a fantastic job of covering a lot of ground today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
Have a great day and weekend, and hope to see you back again on one of these sometime on the road. We'll talk about it offline.
Very good. That's good, Harry. Thank you so much.
Thanks. With that, I want to just do a quick overview of everything else that we have to offer through Crossroads. There are a number of ways you can get plugged in, and I think the more resources and help you can get, the better, as well as being able to connect with other people. You know, obviously on a webinar like this, you're not getting a chance to connect with others, but we do have opportunities for you to do that, and I'll describe that here in a moment. But let me share my screen, and I've got a few slides here to share with you, and want you to be able to plug in and get the help you need through this process. It's a tough road to go it alone, and so take advantage of it. Just for being on this webinar, if you haven't participated in one of our webinars before or other events, we'll be sending you a free gift. It's a devotional called How Long, Oh Lord, How Long? But it's specifically designed for people that are in job transition and to be able to get some encouragement and inspiration and spiritual support during that. There's an index in the back of it that has all kinds of different topics, and you can look up, you know, what are you struggling with right now? And it's got some great insight and spiritual support for you. And we're glad to be able to provide that for you. It'll get mailed out here in the next couple of days. You should have it within a week, and hopefully it's a great help for you as well. If you haven't already, spend time on our website. There's a ton of information there, and everything that we offer through Crossroads is listed there, along with schedules and how to get plugged in. But you'll find detailed information on the events, and there's a bunch of resources. We have a resource page on there. We have a job board on there. There's a number of employers that are familiar with Crossroads and post jobs specifically for us. And so peruse what's there. Obviously, it's not as populated as Indeed.com or Monster.com, but there are a lot of great career-oriented positions that get posted there regularly. So check it out. And when you reach out to those organizations, let them know you found out about it through Crossroads, and they'll give special consideration. So that helps too. But everything Crossroads is on our website, mncrossroads.com. So check that out. We have multiple groups in the Twin Cities area that we represent, and some of these over the last few months, and starting in November, we're going to get in person again in Woodbury. We are only in person, and then we'll always have at least one online option for you for webinars as well. But the first Thursday of each month, so the next one is coming up, I believe on November 2nd, we're going to have Richard Dotson come and speak on LinkedIn, and he's going to give you all kinds of insight in terms of best practices of how to use LinkedIn and what information you can get. It's going to be a tremendous presentation. He does this professionally and has some incredible insight. It's going to be at Grace Church in Eden Prairie on November 2nd at 7:30 a.m. and encourage you to be there. The information is on the website. You can see all the details and take advantage of that. Coming up next month, we're going to start meeting again in person in Woodbury at Woodbury Lutheran Church, and that's in the evenings, the second Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. And we are going to have a live presentation there. Details are on the website for that. And then the third Thursday of each month is online, just like you experienced here today. And that will be 7:30 on the third Thursday of each month. So again, all the details on the website, but some of these are in person only, and some of these are going to be online only. So make sure you're getting it right each time, and come and participate wherever you can. The advantage of the in-person meetings is great because you can meet other people, do some informal networking. You can get there's more interaction with the speaker, and we have other things for you live, and free coffee on top of it. Can't turn that away. So come and take advantage of those as often as you can. on a weekly basis, there's multiple ways you can get plugged in. We have every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. So we'll be following this meeting here in just a few minutes. You do need to sign up online, but we have Networking with Grace, which is focused professional networking, and it's all online through Zoom meetings, not Zoom webinars. So you'll be able to see the others and interact with each other. It's led by Wes Tang and Wes Roper, who we call them West 1 and West 2. They do a great job of making sure everybody's getting something each week. And it's a great place to get contacts, find out information about other companies, share information with others. They really live by the give before you get kind of a philosophy. So be willing to share your contacts and help others in their process as they're going to help you as well. And it's just also a great way to get hope and encouragement and some fresh ideas each week. So get plugged into that. You can participate as often as you'd like. You do need to pre-register online, so check out the website for details on that. We have one-on-one coaching available. If you want to sit down with one of our volunteers, either by a Zoom meeting or a phone call or meet for coffee or something, sign up online and one of our volunteers will reach out to you and set up a time to meet, and you can talk about anything in your job search, whether it's to have them look at your resume or help you prepare for an interview, or get some fresh networking ideas, or just to talk through where things are at and get some fresh perspective on your job search. I think in a lot of cases, people need to be able to talk through their situation with somebody that gets it. Family and friends can be supportive, but they don't necessarily understand the challenges and everything you're going through. And so somebody that does understand can be a great resource in this. And so take advantage of that anytime. Excuse me, had to sneeze there. I think allergy season for the fall may be starting to kick in for me. We have job transition prayer support. I'm grateful we have a few people on our team that are just prayer warriors. They love to pray for you. And we also have our soul care team, which are essentially counselors. If you have a specific prayer request, you can put that on your website. Somebody will respond to let you know that they've been praying for you. But if you feel like you need to talk through your situation from more of a attitude and spiritual perspective on a little more of an ongoing basis, you can sign up for soul care on our site as well, and somebody will follow up with you about that. It's just a great way to get additional support, because as I mentioned earlier, this process is an emotional roller coaster. And I think the more support you can get from people can be a huge blessing and help in this process. The meat and potatoes, or where you can get the most in-depth and ongoing help, is through our online classes. And we have small group classes that start each month. Right now, they're all online through Zoom meetings. And we start a new one, as I mentioned, each month. We cover every aspect of a successful job search. So starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind and doing some assessments so that you can describe better what makes you unique, what makes you different from all the other candidates they're talking to. We talk an awful lot about networking and how to target companies effectively, and best practices for resumes and interviewing. We talk about negotiating and selecting the right job, and there's so much more. And the content is very strong and can give you a great deal of confidence in terms of, are you doing the right things for your job search? But I think as important is just that weekly light accountability, being in a group of others that are in the same boat and that get it, and getting the additional moral support and encouragement and ideas to put you back on the right footing for the next week. And so take advantage of them. I just started a class this past Tuesday. It meets online Tuesdays from 6 p.m. till 7:30. And you can still jump in for this second week. The information's on the website, and you can send me an email to let me know if you want to participate. But we will be starting another class in November as well. I'm getting that nailed down right now, and it'll be posted within the next week or so you can watch the website for that. Throughout the 8 weeks, we also talk about God's perspective of your job search and your life. And he cares a lot more than just what you do on Sunday morning. And so we'll be discussing that throughout the period as well. As I mentioned, new classes monthly, so watch the website. If you haven't seen it already, join our LinkedIn group. If you put in MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box, you'll find us, and you can put in a membership request, and I'll accept that. But it's a great place to get updated information, and there are some recruiters that post jobs in there as well. But we have approaching 2,500 people in that group that have all been through Crossroads, and the overwhelming majority of those are not looking right now. They've landed in positions and are willing to be networking contacts in those organizations. So you can look through the members and find people that are at companies perhaps that you'd like to target, and reach out to them and ask if they might be able to provide some advice or help for you as you're pursuing opportunities at those organizations. And as you land in a new job, I encourage you to stay in the group and just be available for others to reach out to you as well. It's a great way you can give back if you benefited from Crossroads yourself. And I think, just helping others is always a good idea. And this is one way you can do that. Someone had asked in the chat earlier about the presentation today, if it's going to be available, and all of our webinar presentations do get posted on our YouTube channel. And so if you put MN Crossroads Career Network in YouTube search box, you'll find us there, and you can review this presentation. It'll be posted before the end of the day today, and any previous topics we have as well. And one advantage of watching them on YouTube is you can fast forward and skip around or hear parts of it, or you can listen to it in double time if we were talking too slow. So you can use it to your advantage any way you want. But there's a ton of great topics in there and speakers that we've had over the last few years, and you can check them out anytime. And Skip, one of our other volunteers, he talks about, it's a great way to spend a Friday night, curl up with some popcorn on your couch with your significant other and watch job search videos. Maybe not the most entertaining way to spend your Friday night, but it can be helpful. 𝙎𝙬𝙗 is a great partner for us. They provided, helped us in so many ways, providing financial support as well as other resources for us. And I'm grateful for the way that they've been a partner with us for many years now. One of the things they offer for you is a 3-webinar series on financial considerations during job transition. And, they talk about how to re-look at your budget and talk about what to do with possibilities for you for retirement accounts, how to consider those other things that are meaningful. They do some market analysis for you, all free. These are not sales presentations, but really ways to help you get through this process from a financial perspective as well. And so check out the details on the website. You can sign up for those anytime. And those are, I believe, on Tuesdays, but the details are on the website. I just want to acknowledge we have over 40 people that volunteer for Crossroads in one way or another. Nobody's getting a paycheck. Everybody participates because they want to help others with their time, their expertise, their support, and I'm grateful for every one of them. We can't offer all the things we do without all the people that are involved, and so want to point those out. And as you may encounter others, thank them for their time. I'm just glad that we have all these people that are enable us to do all the things we do through Crossroads. If you don't have a church home, I encourage you to take advantage of one of the churches that aligns with Crossroads, Woodbury Lutheran and Grace Church in Eden Prairie, and check us out on a Sunday morning, whether it's online streaming or in person. But building a church community and having that support is, I think, a tremendous way to stay plugged in and get the moral and spiritual support that you need. And with that, I'm done. I hope this has been worthwhile for you this morning. I'm glad that you were able to participate and hope to see you in some of our other events. Be sure to check out our in-person meeting on November 2nd at Grace Church with Richard Dotson, and have a great week. And hopefully you land a job and you don't have to participate anymore at all, but refer to others as well. Take care.